It never really sunk in that I could be dead. Mortality was not realistic. And I remember very vividly thinking about this as a speed bump, and I'll just kind of get over it. Yogi Berra said that if life were easy, we'd all do it. And as fun as it is to quote Yogi Berra, it really just comes down to the fundamental word of choice. How are we going to choose what to do in this moment, given the circumstances that we can and cannot control? Because you become used to the guardrail. You become used to the hand that's holding you, where there's some level of consistency in what's happening in this new normal.
Hey, what's up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery. And today we are with Mr. Matthew Zachary. Matthew, how's it going, man?
It's a pleasure to be here, David, and I've been called much worse, so don't worry.
Okay, good. I love it. Well, thanks for having us, man. You have a pretty unique, pretty powerful story that you're going to share with us today. And I just said, earlier, I said, well, congratulations on what you went through. It's super inspiring, man.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd sentiment to hear because you didn't choose for it. And congratulations is like, I'm here. Yay. What did I do to stay alive? And I really am a bit of a Jenga puzzle 25 years later. But yep, you know what? We're still here. My dad would say happily above the tulips.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm sure there's a lot of hard work and effort. And, I think, if people, we have a lot of real estate agents that listen to this podcast, and it's tough out there right now, and there's, the inventory is the lowest it's ever been. Sellers, there's a lot of uncertainty. So, people are dealing with that on a regular basis. And sometimes you think you have issues until you hear what someone else is going through, so I'm excited for this. So I'm going to do a little bit of your bio, and then I'll have you fill in some gaps. But, 10 years after surviving brain cancer at age 21, you're a concert pianist, composer. You created the first health podcast. Actually, that was after. So, I mean, you went through brain cancer at age 21. Wow. You founded Stupid Cancer, which is a nonprofit responsible for igniting global movement, advocating for AYA, which is the Adolescent Young Adult Cancer Program. And it looks like you support. And I'm just terrible at butchering people's poor bios, man. But you're just an inspirational dude, man. And why don't you just kind of fill in a few more of those gaps about who you are, and then we'll get into a really cool conversation for our listeners.
Sure. Again, it's a real pleasure to be here. My story can be shared in like 3 quick chapters. The first is that I was a classically trained concert pianist and film composer going to undergraduate to study at USC Film School and become the next John Williams. That was my dream when I was 19. And I was on my way there when I was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, the least side effect of which was that I couldn't play anymore because my left hand stopped being able to move. I lost fine motor coordination. Spoiler, it didn't die, but I didn't get to pursue that career. Spent a decade in early new media, IT, creative, digital, graphic design, branding, logo stuff on Madison Avenue, and was plucked out of the ether in 2005 to become a, quote, cancer advocate. Phrase I did not know what that meant at the time. I was incubated and curated by the Live Strong movement back when it was in its wristband heyday, and went on to start a nonprofit called Stupid Cancer, as you pointed out, which was to basically be the Festivus of cancer for the rest of us. It was a Gen X driven sort of act up themed way of being angry that we deserve certain things in cancer, especially when you're not 80. And Stupid Cancer came along with the first radio show in cancer called The Stupid Cancer Show, which you never know you're first, but I hosted it for 14 years. We had a couple of million listeners, and I interviewed thousands of people. Lots of fun, channeled my inner NPR college radio nerd. But stupid cancer became the world's largest community for Gen Xers and millennials, regardless of where the cancer was in your body. We didn't care. We were all about the fact that this is a development stage of life where
Mm.
your needs and your goals and what's important to you are vastly different than those of people who largely get cancer over the age of 70. And ran that group to amazing heights. We have transformed healthcare, passed laws, lobbied Congress, incredible stuff that was done with our partners and with our community for years. And my new chapter is I stepped down 18 months ago, and I've created the first audio broadcast company focused on cancer research, advocacy, and community.
Mm. Awesome, man. Well, again, thank you for all that, for what you're doing, what you're up to. Let's so 21 years old, you diagnosed with I mean, I can't even imagine that, as a 21 year old. What's going through your mind, man?
The tumor. Ha ha. Sorry, bad joke. Had to go
Yeah.
there. My apologies to the listeners. Honestly, I was in such a state of denial because at 21, you're invincible. No matter who you are, where you are, what you do, you're born biologically to be invincible at that age.
Mm.
And I never really sunk in. Honestly, I mean this authentically, it never really sunk in that I could be dead. Mortality was not realistic. And I remember very vividly thinking about this as a speed bump, and I'll just kind of get over it. And
Mm.
I think that came in very handy given the grim prognosis that I'm thankful they didn't tell me until after the
Yeah.
fact. So that was maybe my just youth denial of how close to death I actually came at that age.
Do you think like mentally that helped you? Like the fact that you were just like, yeah, this is just a blip in the road and you didn't, do you think that it has anything to do with that?
Honestly, it might. I mean, we like to say the cat poster is attitude is everything, but to that extent, what does that really mean in the moment? And I'd like to think, I'd like to believe that the less depressed you are, the less depressed you are. And that's to your
Mm.
advantage to figure out what it means to just deal with every single day with the right triage.
Yeah. Did you go through a time of depression, or what was that like? I mean, and I'll tell you, because it's we talked about it at the beginning. It's like it's really challenging. I've been doing this 18 years in real estate. I've never seen inventory this low. I've never seen it this hard to take listings, and I consider myself, at the top, of with skills and so I got to imagine how some other agents are feeling. So, go back to you dealing with this, young kid. I mean, how'd you get through that? Like, what were some of the things you did?
I mean, I kind of just felt like flotsam on the river, just letting it carry me because I had no control over anything. I mean, going back to stress and anxiety, for anyone going through any tragedy, whether it's cancer or bereavement or whatever it is, for most people who can nod their heads when I say this, the last day of anything is always the scariest because you become used to the guardrail. You become used to the hand that's holding you, where there's some level of consistency in what's happening in this new normal. So for me, my last day of treatment was April 30th, 1996. And the ensuing 5 years were just riddled with absolute terrifying depression, anxiety, isolation, self examination, because I didn't have a support system that just didn't exist in the 1990s. But I guess if you want to, there's no real answer to this question, but how did I endure those years? I was able to rehabilitate myself and play piano again, but it took 5 years. So I found that the only anchor I could have at that time was the potential to rehabilitate myself because of what my diagnosis took away from me, knowing that I'd never be John Williams, but I would be something. And that's all I really had to go with for those 5 years.
Yeah. So the type of cancer that you had, what is the I'm guessing you know what like the survivor rate is, things like that. Was
Back
it
in
a
those days, it was 20%.
oh wow. So yeah, so you really defied the odds, man.
I have no idea what worked and what didn't work. I mean, I guess I've been asked that question, like, what got you through it? And, people want, like, oh, God did it, or vitamins did it, or nutrition. Nothing did it. Like, the will of just staying alive every day, whatever that means, I'm going to quote a mentor of mine for your listeners. His name is Dr. Bernie Siegel, really pioneering guy in the 1980s, cancer surgeon. And this might seem like a no-brainer by today's standards, but he was the first cancer doctor that actually had the balls to say that it's more than just the biology that helps you live your life with and after cancer. It's your mind, it's your body, and it's your spirit. And that back in the 80s, that was nonsense. That was malarkey, as Biden would say. No one could consider it to be possible that it's more than just cutting you open and getting things out of you. And he
Mm,
became my mentor, and he helped me understand that his book, which is called Love, Medicine, and Miracles, is how you can choose to try to make sense of things you can't make sense of. So it's a long answer to your short question. And I think the idea is, how the hell am I still here as the Jenga puzzle I said I was before? It's because of friendships and community. Medicine has certainly played a nice part in making sure this thing has been out of me. And
mm,
whatever miracle means to anybody through the context of how you want to define your space in the universe.
yeah. So I mean, yeah. Well, it's and I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. About the mindset thing. I mean, again, I can only imagine because thank God I've never experienced that, but I'm guessing you had a strong mindset, which helped, especially if it's a 20% of people make it through, So I think that along with the other things you mentioned, community, because support, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to, I want to kind of shift this soon to, our listeners right now that are dealing with everything they're dealing with in their business, right? I mean, it's how how do I'm trying to think of what best way to what questions you tell me. What questions do you? I'm very rarely at a loss of questions. So, what do you typically get asked most?
I mean, I think the allegory is that you shouldn't have to go through bad things to be an awoke person, and
Mm,
to recognize that, yeah, you're allowed to be pissed at weird things happening in FedEx losing your package and the mail not showing up and the client leaving, or and just because you can smell the roses and have perspective doesn't mean you discard the fact that things that piss you off still can piss you off. It's actually a fun little milestone of beating cancer, or living with it, where once you start realizing that you can get pissed again at the mail guy, you realize you've kind of made it past all the terrible things. And
yeah.
again, business is business, and your career is your career. It's going to be what it's going to be, what you choose it to be, hopefully. And it really is about, I think we like to say, like, either falling with style, like what Buzz Lightyear said in Toy Story, or enduring with the panache you can possibly have. How do
Mm,
you get through life on a day-to-day basis, knowing a shoe can drop, or if the shoe is already dropped, it could drop again? And surely everyone knows someone whose shoe has dropped. And when you get up in the morning, what do you say to yourself? What do you do to yourself? How do you honor yourself? And who are the people that surround you that help you achieve what you want to accomplish that day? Sounds like a cat poster, but
no,
honestly,
well,
that's just kind of how I live every day.
yeah, I'll tell you, I woke up yesterday. I had an amazing weekend with the family. Stayed up late, way later than I normally do. And yesterday morning, I woke up late. I didn't get up when my clock alarm went off. I didn't go to the gym because I was behind. It was weird. It just kind of spread into my whole day. My whole day was off really just because I overslept, and it's just really, really interesting. And then this morning got back up at 5, and you feel like $1,000,000, man. You know, I, And I think, like you said, it's all the little things. It's everything that we do. So for our listeners that are dealing with right now with these challenges and you know, as it's really difficult, whether you're working with buyers, whether you're working with sellers, you start to doubt yourself. You start to say, well, I'm not really sure if you know, this is going to work, or real estate's for me. What would you say to those people when it comes to like self-doubt?
You know, we're fortunate to live in 2020 when we are, I don't overuse the word woke because I'm a dad and I can't get away with that at 47 years old. But culture has evolved to a point where it's okay to accept certain things and own vulnerability. We don't have to be these stoic alpha people anymore that hide ourselves in a corner and don't want the world to know that we're human beings. And accepting that this is what thankfully society has evolved to, which is maybe a more sensitive way to approach vulnerability, trying to figure out what your priorities really are and how do you stack the deck for yourself and not against yourself when the unexpected happens. I always say bad shit happens to good people, but something like COVID or a housing crisis or an economic downturn, there are always going to be things that challenge. Yogi Berra said that if life were easy, we'd all do it. And as fun
Mm.
as it is to quote Yogi Berra, it really just comes down to the fundamental word of choice. How are we going to choose what to do in this moment, given the circumstances that we can and cannot control?
Mm. Yeah. Well, isn't it? You know, I was thinking about this question. It's like, I don't. I'm just you were 21. You know, when you got cancer. You know, would do you think there's ways to avoid getting cancer, or is it something that like is it do you think I mean, I'm guessing at your age, I don't know if I'm even asking this question the right way, but do you think it's caused by stress and other things like that as well, or is it, or there, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really important conversation to have, this idea of prevention, or we say risk
Mm,
reduction, like lower the chance of this bad thing. Like if you don't want to get a car accident, don't get in a car. It can't be that simple in health because there's so many variables to that
yeah.
extent. But we've reached a point now, again, looking at 25 years of improvement in the way medicine is practiced and drugs are, not to make this geekery, brought to market and whatever. It's easier than ever to choose lifestyles that we now know reduce your
Mm,
risk of bad things happening. Things that may be like diet, diet, of course.
diet.
Can runners and marathoners and peak condition athletes get cancer and die? Of course they can. There is
Yeah.
no one way to avoid anything at all. And yet you can choose to, I maybe like the over under on where your risk portfolio is to channel, you know, the real estate market, the client market. It's a portfolio of risk that you have to choose to do every day. Do stress and anxiety lower your immune system? Yes, that's been evidence based, that's clinically supported. Is having social infrastructure and relationships good for your mental well being? Yes, it is. Tribalism works when done the right way. Can you wake up in the morning and decide to meditate? You can, if that's something you think works for you. Is
Mm,
hugging your children therapy for you? What can you do as a family person? Do you want to own caregiving? Do you want to volunteer? Volunteer service improves mental health. There's qualitative and quantitative data that just volunteering on a board of directors or a soup kitchen, doing something of your own selflessness in the world to help, that changes your mindset. That improves your quality of life.
mm,
So there are things you can control and there are things you can't control. And
mm.
typically people find a way to do the things that matter to them that they know can give them that little dopamine increase without clicking a like button on social media. And and secondly, get off social media.
Why do you say get off social media?
Um because I think it's consumed our humanity, and that anything we should do should be in small doses. I don't mean media. This is media. Good old fashioned interviews, conversations, journalism. Media is fantastic. We need media. I think social media, and there's a documentary out that I'm going to forget the name, Social Dilemma. The Social Dilemma. It's semi conspiratorial, but you kind of want to like to lean in because people tend to get some vibe out of that. I really believe that as a country, as a
Mm,
society, we become a little exasperated with the dopamine of the like button and defining ourselves by how other people perceive a fake online personality on superficial platforms. And that isn't me on a high horse trying to change anyone's mind, but in terms of how do we deal with everyday stress and anxiety, the simplest thing you can do besides going for a walk outside is turn off your computer for an hour.
mm. Yeah, I agree with you. I think I agree. I think social media it depends how much you're consuming at the same time, right? I mean, if I I'm guilty of it myself. Yeah, you jump on, you post something, you get 10 likes. You're like, how come I got 10 likes on that and I got
Right.
50 likes
Yeah.
on this other thing?
Right.
I don't know. I think it's human nature to an extent, but at the same time, if your whole life revolves around that and your identity is based on that, and I think that's unfortunately what we may see. And this is another whole conversation, but I've got three daughters, two younger daughters, and I think sometimes they spend too much time on tablets and stuff.
Hmm.
So let me ask you this: how do entrepreneurs and people listening to this, how would you say for them to use this conversation we've just had in their business and going forward?
Everyone knows someone who's been through some bad shit. Everyone, if not themselves, and hopefully if it's not you, then God bless you for not going through that. But everyone knows someone who's had it rough, who went through a patch that they didn't ask for, and they had to endure. They had to get through that.
Mm,
And how they chose to get through that are teachable moments for us. And again, going back to like get off my lawn 47-year-old, it's okay to talk to people again. The old school telephone. What was it like for you? And just to come full circle with a counter narrative to what I said before, when used like any tool, when used the right way, it can help you. And to that extent, there are platforms for entrepreneurs, for business leaders. LinkedIn itself has become mental health therapy for business people. They entirely transformed their platform to include groups and communities where you can get the life hacks that you need, not just how to endure your business and learn how to do this and sell better and whatever. It's how do you be a better human being in that space at the same time. Leadership is learned, leadership is not earned. And I learned that a long time ago. And it really just comes down to how you treat yourself, should be how you treat your employees, your investors, your stakeholders. Because if you can't help yourself, you can't help anyone else.
yeah.
So that to me is my biggest takeaway in going from the nonprofit space to the private sector. I've never been in the private sector. I'm not familiar with all these fancy little investor words and cap tables and whatnot. I'm learning, but I'm appreciating that my vulnerability is driving success. Not that I'm just deciding to make these decisions. I'm surrounding myself with people I trust who trust me. And despite pandemic and dealing with, my twins are 10. We can nod our heads on kid, COVID, school, public school. Like it's insane as we're recording this show. How do you deal with Mr. Rogers would say, how do you deal with the mad that you feel? I feel a lot of mad right now. And I'm
Mm,
choosing to surround myself with the right dose of tools and life prescriptions, not medical prescriptions, to make choices that I feel are in the best interest of my stakeholders, but more importantly, the best interest of my family and myself.
yeah, man. Awesome. How do we help you, man?
I would love it if people would learn more about my show, which is like I kind of call out bullshit in healthcare every day. All the stuff that makes people shake their heads is why is this the way it should be, and why can't it be a different way? Why is this so expensive? Why does this doctor not know this? What is wrong with this health system? Who is helping me figure this stuff out when I didn't ask to be shopping in the type 1 diabetes, the cancer, the lymphedema, the Crohn's and lupus? I didn't ask to shop in these stores. Why is this so ridiculous? My show is called Out of Patience with Matthew Zachary, and that is my ask of your community.
Awesome, dude. Well, listen, I saw your Twitter too, and you have at wear a mask.
Yep.
And why is that so important, man? I mean, I wear a mask when I'm outside everywhere, but still, I can't believe there's still people that aren't wearing masks.
Look, I'm a creature of data and science. It's my backstory. If you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. And you can measure the impact of collective mask wearing on the impact it has on vulnerable citizens. And as someone who represents 90 million human beings on this planet who've had cancer, they need people to wear masks. It's not about you.
Yeah. Amen. So the final thing I'll say, I remembered, a few years ago, I'd hurt, things weren't going great in my business, and I was doing CrossFit, and I hurt my back really bad doing CrossFit, where I strained my lower back. I got, I can't think of the name of the stuff. It goes down your leg through your nerve.
Oh, sciatica?
Sciatica. Yeah. It was brutal. And I'll tell you what, it was, what it did for me was it really put perspective on what I thought I was having problems the day before, because a few deals weren't going right in real estate, and it was a little challenging. And then I couldn't get out of bed the next morning. I was supposed to go see John Addison. I had like front row seats. I had to give them away. But it's interesting when people go through stuff like that. So I would just listen, all the listeners, the people listening to this, I would just encourage you to, just listen, to this and think about, just where you are and what you're dealing with, and just realize, it could be a lot worse, and just find some gratitude. I mean, that's what I do. I try to find gratitude in everything,
That's a good word.
What would you say? I mean, so somebody that listens to this, Matt, what would you say? Like, what would you say the ultimate thing you want people to take from listening to this interview today? I would say it might not have been my best Q&A interview,
okay.
But
that's fine.
It's a different topic, man, and I'm used to talking about. So I appreciate you coming on, and I'm going to be better after this, as an interview.
There's relevancy to everything, David. Relevancy to everything. Yeah. I think what I'd like people to realize is the only thing that ever made life better for other people are people.
The only thing, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that? Or?
No, I'm going to leave that a mystery. No, I'm totally kidding. Advocacy means different things to different people. And for me, it means that I have the chance to make what happened to me suck a whole lot less for the next person that gets diagnosed with cancer at 21 years old. What version of that applies in the industry? And this is why people branch off and start their own ventures, is they know they can learn from, I don't want to have a boss. Why? Well, I'm going to teach you why it's okay to not have a boss. The lessons we learn in our lives that hopefully teach us things, you then become the Yoda to the next Luke Skywalker, and that's paying it forward. And it applies from careers to parenting, to caregiving, to disease management, to just getting through life when bad things happen to good people.
Well, hey, my friend, I just want to say I appreciate you. I'm inspired by you. I hope everybody listening to this is also inspired by you. And for people who didn't write it down earlier, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Email address or website, or how do we do that?
MatthewZachary.com. I've owned it since 1997.
All right, my friend. Well, hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time today.